Well, Transport Month getting towards the end, the business end of October, which means Transport Month is also going to be ending shortly. Gautrain, we all know how popular that is. Well, the network could soon be tripling in size. The Gautrain Management Agency says it's now at the advanced stages of finalising a massive expansion project. Let's get the details on how that's all going to be looking when we're going to get there as well. The GMA's incoming CEO, Tshepo Kgobe, joining us this morning. Tshepo, morning. Good to have you with us.
Morning, Gerard, and thank you for having me.
Let's talk first of all, why the expansion?
So, Gerard, I think you'd have to think clearly in terms of if we as South Africa were to actually be able to step in and start implementing the sustainable development goals. And I'll talk about three of them. So if you think about, livable cities, and then you think about it and saying, well, how do we ensure that the economy of the country can run properly? And then that's the other sustainable development goal that talks about, resilient economy and talks about, better work. Now, that in itself, you're not going to do it any other way, except you stepping into the other sustainable development goal, which talks about industry, innovation, and what do they call it, an infrastructure. And the Gautrain hosts all of those at the same time, because you're looking at a piece of infrastructure that will require a lot of manufacturing of a lot of things, that requires us to think in an innovative manner for us to go towards that end. But to that end, if you think about it clearly, the resilience of most cities does not lie in any other thing. It lies in the ability for you to move the people around that city. And we are a global city region. So as a province in itself, we have three cities that sit against each other. That actually, in actual fact, we've shown that 70% of movements across the whole of the province actually are cross-border. You go from Tshwane to Johannesburg, from Johannesburg to Ekurhuleni, from Ekurhuleni into Johannesburg and into Tshwane. Now, you need an efficient way of moving people across.
It's like a multi-metro transport solution.
It is exactly that. And you need to be able to bring on a solution that shows that we can be able to move the people. Any cities that choke, you were talking about tourists. When tourists come here, they also look out for business. And when you talk about business, then they look at it how easy is it to do business in that particular area of what do they call it, of the world. And the Gautrain is like the face of what do they call it, of the province itself. When you walk in and you use it, you say, this is a nice place to do business.
But also important for tourists to be able to get around if they come to this province as well, to be able to access something like the Gautrain, because that's where most international tourists, it's their first point of call, because you have the Gautrain at OR Tambo. Yes. It's the first rail network that they're going to see. I want to talk about the expansion. Just give me the practicalities here. It's quite a big network at the moment. Just talk to me about the expansion plans.
It's not actually a big network. 80 kilometers is very small. I think we're only larger than the network in Singapore, which is about 20, 30 kilometers or so. But in essence, when you look at it, what we're trying to do is try and make sure that, first and foremost, we make sure that the townships are connected to the network in itself. The original network does not connect the township. So we're bringing in Mamelodi, we're bringing in Soweto, we're bringing in so the northwestern area of the province itself is not served by rail. So the area where four ways, and those areas are, and Lanseria in itself as an airport, has no ability. And when you think of going there, it's always either you drive there or you'll use e-hailing services.
Which will cost you a small fortune.
Which will cost you a small fortune. And that is important. It's us being able to say, how do we connect the two airports together? And then in addition to that, then how do we actually make sure that that area, you know how clogged up it is for you to try and get out of that area and come out here and come into what do they call it, the economic active areas of what do they call it, of the province itself. So that in itself is part of that. We're also looking at a small spur that goes out into the area of Boksburg. And that in itself, but we have a greater plan than actually the one that has been raised now in the in the current expansion we've already done the feasibility. We actually are looking at, previously the Premier has announced the special economic zones, and in essence, those special economic zones needs to be connected back to the central core. There's a decision that was made by the province in 2013. Which says we will not build out of our urban core. Why are we not building out of our urban core? Is that we want to preserve the green areas in and around the urban core. You want to preserve the areas that that have farmlands on it. You want to preserve the areas that have nature reserves and recreational areas. And we want to densify the urban core. South Africa in itself has struggled over the years with urban sprawl. And what we've done is every time we needed more places to build, we built more and more. But we've never, ever really densified. And one of the second decisions that we made in 2013 was for us to be able to say, we will densify the urban core. And as we densify the urban core, what you're doing is you need to have an ability to be able to move people from in the urban core to the areas where the special economic zones are. And the special economic zones, if everybody was to recall, is the one in the north, the Tshwane automotive, the Roslyn area automotive special economic zones, is the Lanseria Smart City itself, the Erythropolis, the Vaal River City, and also the western one, which is about agro-processing, and Tambo Springs, which is about logistics.
I need to ask you about the cost of this, not what it's going to cost Gautrain, because you're talking about areas like Mamelodi and getting to areas that ordinarily would not have access to this. Gautrain is still seen as an elite form of transport. Elitist. It's expensive. So if you were to get this extra 150 kilometers of railway line, what are you going to do is the question people are going to ask about the cost of traveling on the Gautrain. It's cheaper, yes, but it's not cheap.
That is an important question, and in actual fact, it's what they call it. As I've been doing, the roadshow and talking to everybody about what we're looking at in the future. Is that one of the most important things that we will have to almost do immediately is actually look at how we give access to lower income households to the system itself. We're looking at a differentiated pricing, which is based on what they call it on your a point of origin. So let's give an example. So the particular area in Marlborough, you would have a differentiated pricing that shows that the people that come from that area, that actually live in that area, actually can gain the access to the system. We've looked at a myriad of of options. One was eliminating the boarding fare, which is when you tag in with your card, there's an amount that gets taken on, was eliminating the boarding fare. The other one was having the boarding fare itself, and then also having the per kilometer rate that we charge.
So almost as a pay-as-you-go.
As a pay-as-you-go.
I've heard about that one. I was going to ask you about that, but I'm glad you mentioned that. I need to say goodbye to you in a second. Tshepo, very, very quickly, what's your timelines on this? Because right now you're doing the road shows, there's the talks, there's the plans. What realistically in your mind could we start seeing building taking place?
So as it is right now, we're looking at various funding options, and we will go into full-on feasibility probably beyond June next year.
Okay.
And then beyond that, there will be about a 2-3 year period, and then we'll have shovels on the ground.
Well, fantastic, and I hope to hear from you again as we get closer to that, and I appreciate you coming in. It's going to be good news for the province of Gauteng. Tshepo, thank you very, very much. Good luck with the project. 150 kilometers of extra railway line for Gautrain. It's such an efficient way of traveling, but even as Tshepo says right now, it's still quite small. It's only about 80 kilometers, and they want to expand that into much wider reaching areas of Gauteng.